did those, so we took a summary of those and put it together. All right, so we're going to start with opening statements. Bill Almquist will go first.
Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you, of course, the Republican Party for putting this on. I appreciate the efforts up front and behind the scenes. Bill Almquist, running for County Commissioner seat A. I've been in this seat and love the opportunity to serve. I have lived in St. George area, Washington County, for 44 years with my beautiful wife and our kids. We raised here, small business owner. I know budgets because I live it. I also find the beauty of our area to be intriguing to me, and of course we have to preserve the very thing that draws people here while at the same time being the fastest growing county in the United States. And so planning has been key to me, always has been, even when I was with St. George City, 16 years on the Planning Commission, and I've often said sometimes it's harder to finish a community than to start one. And we're living that. 8 years on the City Council taught me budgets and of course interaction with the other cities as well as the county. And so now with my position as County Commissioner, I find it very intriguing how we deal together on water issues, which, believe me, I live and breathe water every day. I see it in the river and I see it go down, and I have a metropolitan planning organization, planned out 2050 so far with our roads, and I have no doubt that the answer to a lot of our issues here, including illegal immigration. I was a landscaper for heaven's sakes. I never had anybody that wasn't true blue American on our crew. And therefore, that still is an issue to me as far as safety goes. We need to support our sheriff, our police, and I believe my time's almost up. But let me tell you, I'm not going anywhere. This is my last term. I want to finish the things that I started, and I have no desire to serve anymore in an advanced office, whether it's Salt Lake or elsewhere. SCOP, stop. Bill.
So we got all of our markers for the camera here, so if I'm not looking at you and I'm looking at this, that's why. Folks, I'm Bill Officer. A lot of you may or may not know me, but I want to make sure that you understand my background. My career has been feckled with very critical positions, coming from being a Navy veteran, a paramedic, a firefighter, a CEO, and even a former mayor. In all of those roles, making decisions and making critical decisions matters. People's lives can be at stake, and so can the consequences to people's pocketbooks. I'm not able to hide behind a title in any one of those positions. When I became a mayor, I was also put on the fire district board. I learned that I was handed a 92% property tax increase. I wasn't happy with that. We turned it down. I personally went in and was able to bring that down to a 50% tax increase. I still wasn't happy with that. I had to go to the state legislature with our local representatives, Representative Iverson, Senator Owens, and our drafting attorneys to be able to come up with a way that we could use a sales tax instead of raising a property tax or closing doors and laying off people. It took me 3 years to get that across the finish line. It was a lot of politics, a lot of diligence. Am I saying this should have been done before I showed up? Yeah. Was it because they didn't know what to do? No. It takes somebody getting into those seats who has an executive background, the tenacity, and the wherewithal to make these things happen. That's how we're going to avoid having property tax increases. That's how we're going to keep the services that we demand for our safety, our sheriff's office, and also the critical infrastructure that we have to have. Thank you.
All right. It's no surprise that the most asked questions were about growth, water, things like that. So we're going to start out with this first question. Washington County is facing rapid growth. You know, we talk about water scarcity, and the hot topic right now is the data center. So the question is, under our circumstances here with recent drought declarations, do you feel in what circumstances would a data center be acceptable here? How would you approach that here in Washington County? Yes,
It's 1 minute.
It's 1 minute, please.
Okay. So data centers. Data centers are just, we have 3 of them here in Washington County right now. The infrastructure required for a data center is enormous. I don't know if many of you are familiar with what happened in Tahoe. They ended up shutting down the town's energy and giving it to the data center because they paid more money. Look, without the infrastructure, that should never, ever be happening here. One of the things that I think has to happen when we talk about all of this is transparency. The voters need to know every moving part of what's happening. That's not what happened up in Box Elder County, but my answer is no. We're not going to be putting data centers in Washington County.
Well, this will sound a little bit like a broken record, but being on the planning department and also working with the county as well as the cities, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't have the right information that's come out yet about what they're really going to demand from us. But right now, we're already dealing with our power surges that we need to make sure are available. We also need to deal with our water. And it doesn't really matter how much our data centers promise us things. We know that it's hot here, and they don't worry about being too hot. Okay, there's other climates for you to go in, thank you. And it really doesn't quite fit here for those very reasons. And of course, they talk about employment, and they talk about the jobs. I haven't seen that proven to me yet either. But you know what, we're gonna think as a region, we're already part of Five County. I'm not Five County representative in many areas. We need to think about, well, if it's gonna work in Cedar City, great. Cedar City shops in Washington County. Let's face it, we're all going to have those boats rise together, but for us down here, the data center just isn't a good fit.
Thank you. As a follow-up with the water and infrastructure, how do you respond to residents who feel it's unfair to gas that they conserve in their yard and their gardens while we're permitting, private development of golf courses, lakes, and other luxury amenities? So let's go back to you.
Right now, all of the golf courses in St. George are on reuse water, every single one of them. So when you drive by it and you see something in Sunbrook ahead going, believe me, you flushed that a week ago. So my point in all of that is that, yes, many of you have come here, and you've come here and expect water. And then there are others who've been here a long time. I've been a landscaper for 40 plus years, and I've often told people, you don't need all that grass. Okay, if you want to throw a ball, go to the park. But at the same time, somebody says, well, I want all that grass. Okay, then you have to pay for it. It's simple. It's not it doesn't take a rocket science to know that we're living in the desert. But we are sending 6 million gallons a day down the river that we don't need to. We're not legally obligated to do that. And our reuse system needs to be upgraded to the point where we can redistribute that 6 million gallons a day into other places. Parks, of course. Outdoor use, of course. Indoor use needs to be culinary. There are many people here who moved here with that security of water.
So the real answer to this question is the legacy people should never have to compromise for anybody else who's moving in here. Ever. So when it comes to new developments, those developments are going to have to modify their water restrictions, not us. And I hope that message is very loud and clear and it resonates throughout this entire county. Because all of your municipalities, they're the ones who are implementing a lot of these rules. Now that's how the county is going to definitely operate. Your municipalities need to operate in the same fashion. And it's very critical to understand that the Washington Water Conservancy is a subdivision of the state. The county has some influence over that. We pick the board members and we're involved with it intimately. But those board members have got to hear us loud and clear. We're not going to compromise as legacy people to allow for any of the future growth. I will stand on that forever. Thank you.
And you have mentioned for the gentleman that asking questions. If we don't get to your topic tonight, I'm sure these gentlemen would be happy to visit with you individually after. Just make sure you get them. We're going to try to get through as many as we can. So, all right, our next topic is moving on to taxation and fiscal responsibility. So there are conflicting views on the county's tax record. Some claim they have raised taxes, others point to significant increases in special service districts such as fire districts. So how do you define tax policy, or how would you approach that as the county governing body?
Need more than a minute for this one. Okay, our budget's at a historical high. I don't know if you know that it's gone up $60 million in the last 2 years. A lot of that is recurring expenses. Some of it's passed through. The reality is we're also balancing our budget with our reserves. Now the latest stats that just came out is they barely made enough money in revenue to not have to pull out of the reserves the last the last month. This is gambling. That's what's happening. Now, I can tell you from my track record, when I looked at the property tax increase that they wanted to implement, I found another way. That's innovation. That's executive execution, to find a way to not have to raise property taxes. Frugality is of the utmost. If it is not funding the saving of life, property, and liberty, we don't fund it. Now, quality of life is definitely an issue. If the voters elect to do those things after we have funded protecting life, liberty, and property, well, then we do that. But that's exactly where I stand on property, or excuse me, on tax operations and management.
From the day I stepped into office, I said, where are we wasting money? That's what I did as a business, and that's what I looked at. We took the phone system and we said, we have too many cell phones going to people that don't need them. We cut that in half. By the time that we really judged it all, hundreds of thousands of dollars were cut out of cell phones. And those that were really using it for personal use, they had to pay. So the point being is that from the get-go, I have said, where do we need to save? Just today, we found a department that said had somebody retire, we think we can do without that position. That's the fourth position that we have not needed to fill because we were able to say where to provide the same service to our folks and not rehire that position. That has so far saved over $500,000. That's what I will want to do, and is to always look at every penny. It's your money. Let's look at where it's going and make sure it's not wasted. We are the lowest taxed county government in the state, again.
Thank you. Actually, just you started to touch on it, but our follow-up is looking at the county operations. Is there a specific area where you are concerned about spending? What areas would you improve efficiency or cut costs?
Well, if you have a running machine, you don't suddenly say, well, I've got 4 tires on this car and it's going well, let's get rid of one of them. We can't do that. We have to say to ourselves, how can we serve the public with the duties that we have obligated from the state to perform? Marriages, what have you, you just name it. But if there's one area that I feel that we can really trim on is in the services that we provide for our public safety. We know that today they're talking about increasing patrols, but at the same time we have to be as efficient as possible in reaching these unincorporated outer areas. We also have to be really quite efficient when it comes to our utilities. I've asked from day one, what is our utility bill? I'm always turning off lights. It might sound like a small thing, but it means a lot if it's really at the heart of your goal, and that is to save money from the taxpayers. Any particular area, that would be ridiculous if I know, for example, that we span a huge amount of budget and expenses that we really need to look at every single one. And I do that.
My real question would be, why haven't we done it so far? When we look at our budget right now, it has gone up $60 million. We haven't turned it down. And the reason we haven't turned it down is because those expenses keep going up. Post-COVID, folks, remember how much a car costs then? Well, a fire truck has doubled. They're millions. Public safety, we can't compromise there. Administration, I understand that we have some administrative people who are doing multiple tasks that are causing results falling through the cracks. Here's what I find as an executive. If you are not paying your people right, they leave. We have turnover in those people. So we need to make sure we're paying them right. We need to make sure we're keeping the public safety people that we need. Do we have to always raise taxes to fund that? No. And I think that there's some legislative things that we can be doing as far as the TRT funds to help us fund some of those infrastructures that are burdened by the tourists who are coming in here. And so I hope I'm getting very clear to you that we don't need to always look for a cut. There are other ways to facilitate this.
To election integrity and governance. So with the concerns regarding security and fairness for elections that we hear among the public, what are some concrete steps that you'll take to ensure ballots are counted securely? And let's start with that. I'm not going to get too long. So your thoughts on keeping election integrity, counting the ballots at the county level?
I've been down there. I've watched it. Here's my thing. I think that by the time they get there, is the question. How many people watched the news this last couple days in California? Do I need to say anything more? Do you know what happened there? The ballot dumps that came in with 0 Republican, I mean, we're talking tens of thousands, 0 Republican ballots that showed up and moved those other 2 candidates up. Folks, we saw it happen with the Biden administration. We know some changes have to occur, and we need county commissioners who are going to stand up, and I know a couple of them have, and say we're not doing this anymore, and we need our governor to stop mailing ballots.
When I first learned about this, it was important for that every single person that filled out a ballot got it counted. And so we have bought machines that worked well. We've gotten rid of others that I didn't like. We verified signatures. If you sent in a ballot, you voted for just 2 people into the same office, we're not going to say, oh, that's a bad vote. We're going to cure that ballot. We're going to call you, text you, and do whatever we can to make sure we understand who you wanted to vote for, even if that means getting you a new ballot. I have looked at the situation with the post office, and I find it a shame that so many ballots were not counted because they went to Las Vegas. So the problem was that I went to Todd, who's the postmaster for our area at the main Riverside Drive.
All right. For those not familiar with the state law SB 54, we have the dual path, the signatures, and the caucus convention system. What is your position on repealing SB 54? And do you prefer traditional caucus convention system or the signature path?
Well, I thought hard to keep caucus convention alive because they refused. They kept the level at 70% to pass through caucus convention so we could have a meeting like this tonight, primary. I refused to collect signatures. And I do think that we probably ought to get rid of it because there are too many opportunities for that to be a fraudulent case, and too many people coming to your door. Let's face it, I don't like people coming to my door, I don't know. And of course, the caucus convention system, if it's run properly with the delegates that are here, some of them that I recognize, then it is a representative form of how you elect your officials. And quite frankly, the proof is in the pudding over the years that we in Utah may be unique to that. But if anything can happen right in Utah with safeguards, then let's do it. That's my answer.
That's not really the issue with SB 54. The issue with SB 54 is the fact that out-of-state money comes in and finances your candidates. We all know that those dollars are not to benefit Utahns. So when SB 54 is a pathway for someone to get on the ballot and to exercise enormous amounts of outside money to influence an election, we've lost as Utahns. That's why we need to stop SB 54. Those of you who got to see me fighting against Proposition 4, where we got now a Democrat that's going to be sitting in Salt Lake City, it was a constitutional crisis that occurred. That was all facilitated by out-of-state money to try and manipulate the politics within Utah. Look, government closest to the people is the most effective. I'll fight to always do that. I think SB 54 is an atrocity to our system because it is the gateway for out-of-state money to influence our politics, and I'll fight it all the way.
As an elected official, you take the oath to follow the Constitution. Can you provide an example or a decision you've made that demonstrates your commitment to the proper role of government as defined in that oath?
I'm going to try to answer this question. It is not just one constitutional amendment where you are swearing an oath to that Constitution. I'm going to go actually a little bit deeper. Some of you know that I'm a Navy vet. I signed my life on the line to go and defend our country in Desert Storm. I swore that I would defend that Constitution against foreign and domestic threats. Coming from that, I carried that all the way in through public service, and also into my service as a mayor, a representative of the fire district, and will continue on to do it. It's not easy. You're going to have people who are trying to intimidate you or threaten you and try to bully you or sue you because they didn't get their way. You have to continue to stand up and fight for the law, fight for what's constitutionally correct, protect property rights, protect somebody's liberty when it's not the popular thing to do. I've done it and I'd do it again.
As far as I recollect, the Constitution was to guarantee us the pursuit of happiness, the life and liberty that we all enjoy. We have to have that freedom that we would be given, all for the one intent that we can live our lives, that we can have stability in our government, right? That we're not going to be told by somebody what to do. Now, if it's unconstitutional, we have attorneys, we have the state as well, to say, hey, that ordinance is not constitutional. And of course, if it takes away freedoms, then it's on its face unconstitutional. We have our lead civic attorney with us here tonight. He checks that all the time. But of course, it doesn't take that. I know what's right and what's wrong. And I go back to what my mom said years ago. America will never fall from without. It'll only fall from within. And that is if we erode those rights from the Constitution. And I can tell you, I'm not going to pass an ordinance that's unconstitutional. And I'm certainly not going to let my colleagues or anyone else try to say that it is when it isn't. And therefore, believe in the Constitution 100% in all that I do. Have a life where they can live in peace and harmony. I can't even feel safe going to Los Angeles anymore. We had a conference down there and my wife said, oh, go to the flower market, go to the fabric stores. No, you can't even do that. But on our street, the one thing I really love about St. George is you got to get rid of graffiti within 24 hours. You can't have tennis shoes hanging off of the tops of the marking areas that on top of the power lines. You just can't have people sleeping under bridges, and they do it. But part of that is mental health. I sit on the mental health board for 5 county. We deal with that all the time. We're always constantly asking for funds to alleviate or to start programs or something, or rather fund programs that exist to help with mental health. It is a big deal. But quite frankly, it really comes down to our police, our first responders, and everyone out there. Right now, our jail is full, by the way. It's full of people that ICE has brought us off the streets. And until we can fly them out of here, or until we can ship them out of here, our jail is full. I'm glad that we're doing our job.
Look, I've been on the front line of mental health. I've actually had to talk people off bridges before. As a paramedic, I worked also at the rescue mission in Salt Lake City, which was the worst area to be in. Let me tell you where all of this kind of starts, though. It's not just after they've got the problem. A lot of this is economic development, making sure that people have jobs. When you have a job, you have respect, you have self-discipline, you're showing up, you're doing things, you're participating. If we have good economic health for not only the adults in the room, but the kids growing up, that's our biggest export. So if we can get that right, we're starting to stave off a lot of mental health problems. Mental health does exist, but I think economic development is the other side of the equation that people need to start to consider. We do have to have those resources. It's not always a choice, and we have to be there to support that when it does become a crisis. Not only for the individual who is experiencing the crisis, but also their family. And I think we just saw that in the news last night with regard to a couple of kids that were the victim of that. It's heinous. We need to have resources available for that.
Thank you. All right, the next follow-up with that is the county works with, obviously, the sheriff's department. And with immigration, do you support Washington County giving resources and working with federal agencies like ICE and deportations?
Do I support the county getting resources from the federal government? Is that the question?
Yeah, working with federal agencies.
Absolutely. I remember talking with Sheriff Brooksby when I first became a mayor and identifying some of the stories that were coming out in the news about how our jail was having to turn people away and understanding the dynamics that were associated with that. And it was critical to identify that our state legislators were trying to fight the contracts that were required by the jail to be able to house somebody who was an illegal immigrant. It was ridiculous. They had to have certain flavors of soap or I don't know. It was ridiculous. And so the consequences that were there were removed. And I was so elated. So absolutely, to answer the question, yes, we have to support our sheriffs in being able to do this. Yes, we have to have the room available to bring them in. Right now, we've had to move a lot of them down to Las Vegas and places. We need to support them. They need to work with our organizations. That's why we don't have picketing going on here, because they are working so well together.
kind of mentioned that already, but I want you to know that not only is the problem with the illegal immigration here an issue which we're tackling head on, but also all of the prey that we have from those who are trying to exploit our senior citizens, and with all of the fraud units that fraud attempts. We have an anti-fraud unit. We have Property Watch, so that somebody can't steal your property. If you go to the county's website, you'll find that under the recorders section. And I encourage you to go and register your property so that you can't have those stolen. But also what's important to me is that on our streets every day, you ought to feel safe to walk there. And of course, as I already mentioned, our jail is full. When it comes to the mental health side I didn't mention, we have a crisis stabilization center that the county started, which is a way that you can do a 24-hour detox, or you can get people off the street temporarily and try to get them the help that they need. We also work tight with Switchpoint, which even though some may say, well, it just attracts people here. Yeah, well, if they're here, let's make sure that they're registered, that they're doing the right things, and getting a little help and making sure that they quite frankly, can live their lives as well.
Thank you. Is there anything specific that you would like to see improved with our county sheriff department? Because you guys work closely together. And what are some things you can do to prioritize that we get the best officers in those positions?
Well, quite frankly, when you compete with all of those agencies that are paying so much more money, and then you lose officers, and you have that challenge, quite frankly, we've got our next sheriff sitting right here. We talk all the time about the challenges that we faces out there. But we did complete the medical unit to keep our nurses and doctors safe so that we could have a safe booking. That's important. So that we have people working at the jail, they need to be safe too. At the same time, we need to make sure that we protect our association with the state. We receive money from state prisoners that come down here to the tune of $80 a day. And the state pays us to house them. They're not the ultimate criminals. They're not the those that you would be afraid of even in jail, but rather those that we can use. I'd like to see that improved. I want to see a full house of state inmates. We have to take care of our locals, but we can make our jail actually pay for itself that way by having more state inmates.
Thank you. Just a feedback question for Bill. Is there anything specific you'd like to see improved with the county sheriff department working with the county, and how will you ensure that we keep the best officers in those positions?
Well, first of all, that jail expansion, I'm not a big fan of, especially when it incorporates bringing other prisoners from across the state and other states into our county. That's what's happening. Their families are going to be coming here to be able to visit with them. That doesn't bode well. I can just tell you from experience. So I'd like to see that stop. I'd love to see our sheriffs get the best training possible. That is not only talking about their ability to perform tactical operations, but also mental health operations for themselves. These people are under enormous stress all day. They bring it home. You can't just take it off with the badge and the belt. I saw that, I experienced it. I want to make sure that they get all of the support that they need, including financial support. Thank you.
Thank you. Switching gears to ethics and transparency. Voters have raised questions about potential conflicts of interest. So how will you ensure that your private business interests or your campaign donors or sponsors do not influence your decisions as a commission?
So, by law, every year we have to fill out a disclosure form. Anybody who's in public office, identifying what your possible conflicts of interest are. But deep down, it's up to you. You have to, by law, just announce that conflict of interest. I think it should be taken one step further, wherein if you do have a conflict of interest, you shouldn't be voting on that. Now, I hope that does get implemented. It's at a state level. It's not a local level. But I believe that when you have a conflict of interest, you expose that conflict of interest, and if you are involved with it intimately, you are stepping back from it. Many times, I could have been involved with things as a mayor on that fire board and different things that I just had to put my hand out and say, I don't want any part of that. I don't want to be involved with it. Oh, no one's ever going to find out. That doesn't matter. You're the one who's having to resolve it. you never know what's going to come up, who's listening, what could happen. That doesn't matter. You have to know inside. So I hope that that new law does come into effect where you recuse instead of just announce your conflict.
We'll all start out by saying I don't have any. I sold my company, my wife's in my company when I took office because this is a full-time job. And if it's not 9 to 5, it's 9 to 5 at night. And I'm often frequently up answering emails or just proposing things or working on planning. You just don't have the time to run another business. And quite frankly, I don't have those conflicts because I only own one piece of property in Washington County where my house is, none others. I can't benefit from a rezone. I can't say to anybody, hey, do that because I'll be enriched by it. It just doesn't exist in my life. And when somebody wants to come to me and they want to have an ex parte conversation, a developer, I usually pull someone else in the room because I don't want somebody to think that for even a second I made some deal with somebody to vote a certain way just so that they can be enriched. It's just not in my desire to do that. I support my fellow commissioners because we all feel the same.
Many constituents sometimes feel ignored by their representatives. What's your personal policy on returning calls and maintaining transparency?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people in the room will come up to me and say, thank you for calling me back. I'd like to say that it's about a 97%. I don't know where the 3% goes because I probably fell asleep on my computer. But the point being is that I have said for years that I listen. I had somebody come up to me tonight and say, thank you for years ago listening to me. It may not always go my way, they said, but I at least appreciate that. Why not listen? We're all citizens, we're equal together. I don't rise above you because I suddenly have an office. I need to listen to what your feelings are. And sometimes they're skettywampus. That's a good word, look it up. But my point is that I really, really want to hear the other side. Because guess what? I'm not always right. And if I can hear somebody in their position, I've changed my mind several times because people have come, either communities together or individuals who said, this is the way I see it. And you know what? I go home and go, I think I see it that way too. And I think that's important to listen to your constituents about that. It's a full-time job though.
It comes down to transparency and being able to communicate with all of your constituents, no matter where they sit on the spectrum. If we've got someone who's showing up in a tinfoil hat and wants to yell at something, they have that right to do it. I think the question came up earlier about constitutional rights. When we're talking about communication with our constituents, it comes down to almost being like a CEO. If you think that that guy sitting in the CEO seat is making all the decisions on their own, get out of that company, do not invest in that company's going to die. What you need are incredibly dedicated, smart, passionate people feeding information into that CEO so that decisions can be made with all the facts present on the table. And that's exactly what I'll do as a county commissioner with all of you and with all of the people who are on our staff. We talk with all of them, we communicate, and we have that open dialogue about what's going on. And then you hear what's happening, tell us if it's right or wrong, we pivot or we move from that. But it's not just a one and done. Thank you.
Recreation. Sorry, Bill. From managing whether it be the pickleball courts to the designation of the high desert trail for motorized recreation, how do you balance the competing needs of recreational groups while funding those infrastructure needs?
Well, I hope my opponent's going to talk to you about the pickleball courts that were over at the county commission building. That was a good example of it took an election season to get those open. It's also something that should be considered with regard to, is it protecting life, liberty, and property? Those are the things that we should be funding first. The quality of life issues come after. Now, when we have a balanced budget and we're not able to having to pull from reserves, we can ask the voters if those are things that you want to have involved in your communities. But the ability for us to access trails that are going from this end to that end and all of the extra things, those come after the funding of property, life, and liberty. Now, we can do some of those things with the TRT funds that are available. It's going to take someone going toe to toe with our legislature to allow us to modify those percentages and get those dollars here instead of raising your taxes to do it. Those are tourist events, activities, and that's how they should be funded.
Awesome. The most expanding sport in the nation is pickleball. We knew that, and we built those for public use to begin with. If you want to call Judge Newford and ask him why he sent us a letter saying to shut it down, do that. Because it was always meant to be an open public space. Now, not dwelling on that, how can we help the rest of the county with our TRT funds? We need to distribute it. We need to make sure that it's available for cities. We have done that. We've distributed more than any other county in the state. And believe me, there are many opportunities. Wherever the 60 million keeps coming up, I want to say something to you about that. We've received quite a few grants and things to make improvements. We've also had sales tax improvements. We've been the fastest growing county, so that means more money is coming in from those that are paying fresh new taxes. Your property taxes haven't been, mill levy has not been raised in 16 years because that adjustment has been there. And quite frankly, I'm partnering with this stop sign right now. And so I'll finish it in the next go around.
We're gonna have a 30-second rebuttal, and you have 30 seconds to add.
So where that $60 million increase comes in is from the county budget. It has increased over the last 2 years by $60 million. It's right there for you to see on the county's website. It's also right there for you to see on the state's website. Yes, there has been some federal flow through. It's not the entire $60,000.
You have 30 seconds as well.
Yes, we are a growing county. Guess what? Our business is thriving. Our ship is not sinking. We are sailing these high seas, and it's going to come to us that when we are successful, we're going to see more money. But guess what? We send it right back out to you in services. We don't hoard it. We're not using it. We're not tucking it away. We're not giving it away to others. We use that money to provide the services. I'm still debating that. I want a big fact checker. Who can fact check that? That's 60 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, the northern border has been a big issue for the county. How do you work with the groups that are, the environmental groups, the people that are suing? What can the county do to move forward these infrastructure projects like the northern corridor?
I care deeply about our environment. I got to tell you, it's beautiful. Many people live here because they love the scenery, they love the people that are here, and they love the animals that are here. But the environmental groups care nothing about that tortoise or the poppy, nothing. They just want to win so that they can go back east and say, oh, we've done this, and collect their millions of dollars to support their lawyers. We need the northern corridor to get to the east, from the east to the west, and vice versa. It's not a corridor where you can put houses on the side of it and hotels. It's a parkway, and that's all it's going to be. And for fighting for it since it was authorized by Congress in 2009, don't we deserve to be able to control what we need to do in our county? It's growing. I don't want to be parked on Bluff Street, wait 5 times for the light while everybody else around me is polluting. I just want to go where I need to go. And we have shown by our traffic studies that the northern corridor will do that. So let's build it, and let's tell these DC judges to stay off of, one, Congress's abilities to say what we can do, as well as stop listening to groups that care nothing about our county except for how they can abuse the citizens' privileges with scare tactics.
I'm going to hit 2 of the points on here. One of them was listening to our constituents. I actually just recently spent a solid afternoon with Congresswoman Malloy, the residents of Green Springs, reviewing that northern corridor. I believe the northern corridor is essential, but is it essential for where it is placed right now? I learned that a lot of the biologists are the ones that moved that. Conserve Southwest is suing our county and the federal government to try and stop this, wasting your tax dollars. I'm furious about that. But we do need to have that transportation pathway through. We have to be talking to those constituents, many who told me they tried to have someone listen to them, and no one did. And so I facilitated having Congresswoman Malloy come in, myself, we sat and listened to them. We were able to find out a lot of information that I'm going to be taking back to the MPO, back to some of the biologists, and try to fight this the other direction against Conserve Southwest, who's trying to stop this and waste your tax dollars.
Thank you. Whether you're the incumbent or the challenger, what specific accomplishment from your career, either outside of politics or something you've done in the office, do you feel is the most impactful for Washington County?
Well, I think I started off with that. When I first climbed in and realized that I was handed a 92% property tax increase, this was a volunteer mayor from Leeds who spent thousands of hours to try and find a sales tax for the tourists to be able to fund our infrastructure, or critical infrastructure of fire and EMS. Now, many of my other accomplishments do include being as a CEO. I did a big turnaround. Turnarounds, if you don't know what that is, that's a bankrupt company. This company is ready to be folded, everyone laid off. You have to go in every day and make very difficult decisions to make that company profitable again so that it's viable for all of the employees who are still employed there. And so this is an incredible accomplishment that I'm proud of. We did one in 3 years, and we were able to turn around and sell it for millions of dollars. Now that company in and of itself was a retirement for many people, so I'm very proud of that aspect as well. But being an executive is how you get these sorts of things done. It creates innovation that you're able to go out and find new solutions to the problem instead of taking somebody else's money.
I would say 95% of you don't live in a county. You live in a municipality. And I have taken pride on the fact that I used to hear stories like, well, Washington and St. George are at war over something. Or that Ivans and Santa Clara can't see the eye to eye on something. I have felt for a long time that all of these gears that are our cities and towns that have to operate together like a Swiss watch, what is the county's role? To be the grease, to be the oil, to make sure that there isn't that friction. And I felt like with the endorsement of every mayor except for Apple Valley, which I couldn't get a hold of Michael for hope he's alive. Anyway, I've seen that in me. That ability to accomplish getting along and making people place in the playground together. That's been the greatest accomplishment, I believe, and they have shown it by their endorsement. Now beyond that, with the few seconds that I've got left, I love our water plants. I love the roads we've been able to accomplish. I love a brand new building that serves our public that has no debt, and we did not raise taxes to build it.
Anything that's specific that distinguishes you, separates you from your opponent?
Well, obviously the experience that I've had, I respect Bill for being a mayor. He took that on. He had two constituents. I don't know why I didn't run again, but my point being is that for my experience, with 16 years on St. George Planning, with 8 years on St. George City Council, 8 years on the commission, and one more term to finish off some things and then I'm done, I believe that stands very well. When you call up somebody and they say, Gil, what can I do for you? That's come after years of relationship building, and believe me, that's important to me. Not me telling them what to do, but me listening first and saying, what do you need and how can I help? Well, that's evident when you have that kind of experience because they know they're not starting from ground level on talking to you about zoning or where pipes are or how Little Valley got developed, all during my time on planning and city council. I just tell you that straight up, if there's any kind of difference, it's the fact that I've gone down all of these trails many times and I know exactly where the twists and turns are and I can walk them in the dark if necessary.
Distinguishes you or separates you from your opponent?
Okay. Well, I think it was brought up why I didn't run again. And in fact, I saw the gentleman walk in who asked me to step aside so that he could run. We had that conversation in the clerk's office as I was going to. And I don't feel like politics, especially volunteer politics, should be a career. You should be stepping aside and letting new blood step in. He gave it a chance, and I think a very valuable one. Now, what separates me from my opponent are many things. I can tell you that one of them is my executive background. My ability to sign both sides of that check, having been an employer and an employee, have taught me very many lessons along the way of how to prioritize, how to communicate, how to get things done, and make sure that we're communicating with everybody who's a stakeholder in the situation. Now, I've come up with innovative solutions, not only in my corporate life, but also in my service life and in my military life. So those are the differences that I bring many years of service outside of 3 decades of public service in political office.
Thank you. We're gonna have a 30-second rebuttal on this one.
95% of all the businesses in the United States are in somebody's office, and they walk out the front door and kiss their wives goodbye. If you want to have executive experience, then go ahead and be part of a huge corporation at the very top levels. That's a very small percentage of people. But when you come home to your wife and say, we made no money this month, we met our bills, and that's it, there's nothing to put away, that causes you to say, how can I be more successful? How can I serve people? How can I still charge a fair price? But at the same time, that executive experience isn't on the top floor of a Manhattan building. It's often when you're deep in the dirt and you're trying to be a landscaper and scrape together enough experience for your family and money.
Thank you, Bill. One more question, then we'll do closing statements. This is the Republican Party primary, so we want to ask the candidates, what's your favorite plank in the Republican Party platform? And on the other side, is there anything that you don't fully agree with in the platform?
Okay.
Yeah, we're with you.
Well, there's nothing I disagree with in the platform. In fact, I tried to hand them out at our convention because I believe that everyone needs to read that platform. Primarily, I believe that it opposes abortion. It's in favor of gun rights. It is obviously in favor of individual property rights. Everything in the platform, it's like saying, well, what's your favorite part of the Bill of Rights? Well, all of it, and our platform has survived the test of time. If you look at our opponent's platform, not my opponent, Bill's great, I'm talking about the Democrat platform or others, they change it all the time because they are flexible, they just blow in the wind. Whatever happens to be on the news, that's where they change their platform. You can't find those changes in the Republican platform. We know what we stand for, we have for 100 years or more. Since Lincoln said, hey, let's stand for America, let's reunite the nation. Quite frankly, our platform is exactly in the right position to help our county, and we can't afford to abandon any part of it, nor the politicians that support it. Bill?
I don't know if you're familiar with the fact that I'm on the State Central Committee of the Republican Party. That's an elected position from all of our delegates and chairs and vice chairs. With that, I'm heavily involved with all of the policies of the Republican Party. I can tell you, first of all, that I stand for limited government. Get government out of the way. That is the number one thing. I am very big on standing up for those who are unable to stand up for themselves, which include stopping abortions. Folks, I realize there are circumstances where abortions have to occur. We cannot make it birth control. All of the rest of the Republican platform circles around constitutionality, of which I'm very passionate about, making sure that we are protecting life, liberty, and property in all of our mission statements within the Republican platform. Dignity, respect, and trying to work with our country is the only way that we're going to continue to grow our party. We have to reach out to the youth and bring them in. That is one of the most key components for our Republican platform. Thank you.
Topics. We're going to end with our closing statements, which should be 2 minutes, and since Bill went first last time, we'll start with you, Bill.
Thank you for coming. Thank you to the party for putting this on. This was a lot of work. This has been a lot of work for all of us for the last almost 6, 7, 8 months. What's really important is that you got to know the candidates. You got to understand that hiding behind a title isn't an option. Execution results. Being able to take on tough responsibilities and find innovative ways is how we are going to get through the next 4 years. Folks, you can look in the rearview mirror all you want, but that's not going to get you forward. You have to be looking through the windshield. That's how you're going to identify where to go next and be able to solve problems. That's exactly why I'm running. That's exactly why I'm asking for your vote. My name is Bill Hoster. Thank you for coming tonight.
I think my wife will say, another meeting? When I was first asked to be on the planning commission for the city of St. George, I didn't even know what that was. But I spent my time there learning, making sure that I did find out what citizens wanted, what they needed, making changes to the planning documents, which we're still doing, that's an ongoing process, to make sure that we can accommodate what people want to do with their land and give them that opportunity. But quite frankly, the whole reason that I'm running this last time is to finish off some loose ends. Yes, you know, you don't take a cake out of the oven when it's half baked. You want to finish it. And I'd like to, or at least I'd like to get it to the point where we can say, we're stable in our next 20 years in water. We're stable in our transportation route east and west. I want to get it to the point where if I have to hand it off to somebody who can take it from there, great. But my true essence of why I like to run is that one-on-one time when somebody lost their home in Pine Valley and I was willing to go up there and help them clear it out. And somebody said, oh, that was just a political stunt. You took a picture and what did you do? Rub that charcoal all over your face? I want to say, get out of our county. We have people that serve. We're the most generous county in the entire state for volunteerism, for going out and working. I like building stairs to Rockville when they said they needed it. I like going out and solving a problem on an enterprise road out by on the west side when somebody said, I'm at risk of not being able to get to my house in the winter. I like doing those kind of nuts and bolts, boots on the ground, that sort of thing. I'm not seeking a higher office. I'm done. I want to spend some time with my grandkids and my wife. But I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, I still want to serve one-on-one, people eye to eye. Come into my office. They criticize us for having bathrooms. Please come and use mine. It's an opportunity. Believe me, it's not gold. But at any rate, thank you, Gil Almquist, running for County Commissioner today.
Really appreciate all of these great men for putting themselves out there ready for this spot. So this is for seat 8. Remember to get your ballots in by June 23rd. And we're going to switch to seat B. So we're going to start with 2-minute opening statements and then go on to the questions, which will be 1-minute answers. So Victor, you can go first for opening statement.
Very good. Watching that quarter roll across the floor made me think about this campaign. I'm sure Troy would relate. Anyway, I want to thank all of you for being here. We had a debate earlier this week, and Troy and I also pulled the straw to come in second, or maybe it's just because we're both running for seat B, and we did it alphabetically. But anyway, after Gil and Bill got done, half the audience got up and walked out. So it's fantastic. I want to congratulate you all for passing the test and staying here and being committed. I also want to thank all of my friends from the other side of the county. This is home to me. I live over here, live in Leverkin, lived right down the street, before. And so anyway, thank you. But the one great thing about Washington County, it doesn't matter where you go, it is a beautiful place. And I often say that the only thing that is more spectacular than the beauty of our county is the goodness of our people. And I really mean that. It doesn't matter if you lived here for a long time as a family, or if you're one of the great people who have moved in, thank you for being here. And I guess I better pick up the pace because I just already been told that time is going. But I just want to tell you that this election is about trust. It's about, I ask you today, as we talk about these important issues, these questions, judge me on my record, on what I've been able to accomplish. The time that I've been a commissioner, we have not raised taxes, we've paid off debt. In fact, we've lowered taxes on a couple of occasions, so we have that opportunity. And as we look forward to solving the problems of water, transportation, and quality of life issues, if we continue to do those things, I just ask you to judge me on the record that I've done and the few things that we need to get done in this next 4 years. So thank you.
Again, thank you all for coming. I think I see a lot of friendly faces out here, but there's a lot of people here that don't know me. So just kind of go back and let you know who I am and where I come from. My grandpa came here in the early 40s, or late 40s, I guess, to coach at Dixie College. And back then, when you were coach, you were coach. And so some of the old timers here in town were fortunate enough to play for my grandpa. But my dad grew up here between here and Ogden, and then was up north and married my mom. My mom went to BYU, and they started a family up north in Utah. And so I was born in Utah County. We moved down here when I was 7. Moved out to Bloomington. Really lines and whatnot, but it's been fun to see the community grow and the people come in, and I welcome and value everybody that's new to the area. At least new to me was anybody that was here after the first stoplight in the county. Went to Pineview High School. After Pineview High School, I went to the military, served in the Army for 9 years, 5 years in Germany, and was deployed twice, came back, served another 4 years stateside. But I was kind of at that pivotal point where do you stay in for full 20 or do you get out? My kids were getting ready to go to school. And my dad at the time needed some help with the family business. He said, well, come on back. He says, I'm going to give you an opportunity. He says, I'm not going to make you comfortable. He says, well, I'll give you an opportunity. So I started working for him, and he kind of created the scenario where I would go out and do things on the site. You know, do a spec home, build a house, or I'd do a job for somebody, and that's how I supplemented my income. But I really enjoyed doing that. In 2015, they were trying to talk my dad into run for city council, and he said he wasn't one of those that liked having people get mad at him. So I said, well, I don't have too many friends, I guess I'll do it. And so I ran and I was elected. I thoroughly enjoyed the long-term planning process of the city and thoroughly enjoyed contributing to the decision-making process of my city, and hope to be able to do the same at the county level. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And as a reminder, if you have a specific question or we don't get to your question, please visit with these gentlemen afterwards. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your question. But we did get through quite a few topics in hour one, so. All right, our first section here, of course, is always the most asked: growth, water, and now data centers, because that is a hot topic. So with Washington County, we'll start with Troy on this one. With Washington County facing critical rapid growth, and with the recent route declarations, is there a circumstance where you would allow data centers here, or what is your approach on approving those?
Approach on data centers. You know, I saw a report a couple of days ago that they've come out with new 3D printing for cooling process that reduces the cooling requirement on data centers like 98% of what currently is today. I mean, I think that at some point, if there's some technology that would allow it to catch up, maybe. But they're so resource intensive that we don't have the resources, we don't have the ground for it. So I don't think it has a place in southern Utah at the current moment.
We have 3 small data centers in Washington County, but we don't have the power or the water for anything close to what has been proposed up in Davis County. It's just not the right fit. And the power requirements alone, we talk a lot about water in this county, but the power requirements for data centers, we just do not have the water or the power capacity to do any major data center in the county.
Thank you. Along the same topic, let's start quickly this time. How do you respond to residents who feel it's unfair that they are being asked to conserve water for their yards while developers are permitted to build private lakes, golf courses, and other luxury amenities?
Well, on several of the projects, I'm not super excited about the water use. Some of the water rights are not quality water, but as new development is coming in, the conservation requirements on new development is different than what it is for existing homes. And so it's been my commitment not to turn Washington County into what Las Vegas became, where you had water police and everybody out there, telling people to turn off their water. So we've tried to respect property rights and existing homes. At the same time, if you're building a new home, you need to build it under stricter conservation requirements.
In Washington City, I pushed back against the TNEA project that comes in that's a heavy water use. Recently you heard about the surf park that they proposed for Suki Farms down there. Now, they own their own water, and so they have a right to that water, and they have a right to keep the use of it. But in that agreement, number one, I voted against it, because first off, I'm not going to turn myself into a hypocrite. I'm not going to ask anybody in my community to conserve water and not ask everybody to conserve water, and that includes the developers. But in that case, we got it written into the agreement. They have zero access to any culinary water, period. And this is not just today, this is long-term, to where they're not allowed to use it. If they get some of that briny, brackish water, that's on them. But, I didn't like that project, and I voted against it for this simple fact. That briny, brackish water may not have value today, but at some point it's going to have value to our kids and grandkids and their ability to live here and grow up the way
mention, just so you guys remember, you can ask for a 30-second rebuttal as well if you need them on these questions. Okay, moving to taxation and fiscal responsibility, we'll be starting with Troy. There's conflicting views on the county's tax record. Some claim taxes haven't been raised, and others point to significant increases in special services districts such as fire districts. So how do you approach the county, how do you approach the county's tax policy?
Well, I think if you're talking taxes, you need to be honest about the taxes where they've been raised and where they haven't. I mean, Victor's correct. You know, they say that the mill levy hasn't been changed on the property tax for the county. Problem is, I go back to my taxes and I pull them up for the last 5 years, and that line item's gone up 15%. There's a couple of instances where they say they dropped the taxes, but they fail to tell you that they also created the transportation tax in 2019 that was voted down in 2016. They created that tax out of thin air, and so that is a net tax increase. They've also, in other areas, raised taxes in boards and commissions that they serve on. So put the whole picture out there. In Washington City, we're having to deal with the fire and EMS because in 2016, when I came on in Washington City, our public safety was 60% of the general fund. This year, it's 88 going on 89%. And I think it's important that the safety of the community is taken care of. And you can't run a city on 11 or 12%. So we'll have to look at the fire and EMS. But what we did in Washington City was we're putting it on the ballot, we're letting the residents decide, and we're coupling it with a 50% property tax cut in my city. So it's a net tax cut for my residents, and it's going to push that burden to the tourists and the non-residents that are putting pressure on my system.
When it comes to taxation, it's important to approach it with a philosophy that the money belongs to the citizens. And keep it in the pocket of the citizens, and don't go and ask for it. Like, I'm going to go ahead and speak out. I think that the last time the school district raised property taxes, they didn't need to. It's what I call a preemptive tax increase. So when we talk about taxation of the county, we have not raised the mill levy in the county. Now, the way the tax system works, there is a possibility that some people's taxes stayed flat, some people's taxes went down. When it comes to the issue of the Hurricane Valley Fire District, the Hurricane Valley Fire District was established prior to me. We still disagreed with the state tax commission that we were even supposed to vote on. But we worked with the Hurricane Valley Fire District for over 5 and 6 years to the point that public safety was at risk if we did not approve a tax increase that they sent to us. And so that issue is off the books as far as I'm concerned when it comes to my record on taxation.
Thank you. All right, let's start with you, actually. Looking at the current county operations, is there a specific area of spending that concerns you? And what areas do you see for improving or cutting costs?
Well, government always needs to evaluate. Do I need to come over here? So, yeah, I didn't know. They probably just didn't look at my arm the whole time. So, what's the question? It's about getting all distracted over here, Gary.
See the box.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Looking at the current county
We're going to
operations.
have a perfect cloudy over here.
What specific areas of spending that concern you the most, and what areas do you see you could improve efficiency or cut costs?
So the thing that's a little bit different in the county budget opposed to a municipal budget is that you have different funds and segregated funds. What concerns me most, obviously, is Fund 10, which is where you have your public safety, it's where you have your county attorney's office. And we've done really well at just working with our fellow elected officials, asking hard questions as county commissioners about what the needs are. And we have fantastic county employees. But we do have to keep up with wages when it comes to public safety. We just barely expanded the jail, and the jail is going to require 13 additional employees. So whenever we have something like that as we grow, those are additional costs. But I think asking hard questions helps control the budget.
I think a couple of budgets I would look at. I'm in construction, right? So anytime you're doing a project within the county, I like to dig into where's the dollars going. You know, how do we save money? And that's one of my job is to keep projects on point and under budget. as much as possible. So any of those capital projects are important to me. I think the tourism dollars are important. The reason why I think the tourism dollars are important is because every person in this county, every community in this county is impacted by the tourists and the tourism dollar. And the tourism dollars need to be fairly and equitably going back into these communities. I think that it's a problem for me in Washington City to feel like I have to compete with other cities. I don't think I'm in a position to compete with St. George. I don't think Enterprise is in a position to compete with Hurricane. I don't think either of us are in a position to compete with, the university, for example, that's received tourism dollars. And I think it's important to look back at it and say, how do we not only let our residents know that those dollars are being spent in a just and judicious manner, but that they're being fairly and equitably distributed throughout the community.
Well, 30 seconds.
So when it comes to TRT, it's run by the state code. So you have a tourism tax advisory board where cities can come in and ask for help. As a county commissioner, one of the first things I did was create this process by which cities can bring in projects that both benefit their citizens and the tourists. And as far as Washington City goes, we've never said no to any request that Washington City has asked for.
Yeah, I'm going to rebut the rebuttal. I think it's fair to be able to sit back and say, look, we get it. There's a state rules on how the dollars go out, right? They have to go for tourists and tourist things. But there's no reason that the county commission and the TAB board can't look at that and say, hey, we're going to try to push some money into these other areas that really haven't, in some cases, didn't really know was something they could access.
Thank you. All right, switching topics here to election integrity. Citizens have concerns regarding the security and fairness of our elections. So what steps will you take to ensure that the ballots are counted securely?
A lot of you remember, well, I remember certainly right after they went in and liberated Iraq. They came out and you saw the pictures of the Iraqis with the blue finger. They went and dipped it in the finger. I don't know, that's maybe not a bad way to do it. That way you only know you got one vote and you're proud of the vote that you took. I think it's important that you have the confidence in your election, because if you don't feel like the elections was handled fairly and equitably, then you really don't, that undermines the person that got elected, right? I've had some conversations with one gentleman in here that was a little wound up about me, regarding my stance on the election in 2020. I didn't think that was an honest election. I think a lot of people don't think that was an honest election. But you gotta be able to step back and look at it and say, did they do it right? I think Washington County, in all fairness, does it pretty right. I mean, I like the fact that it came out this year with your last 4 of your social, last 4 of your driver's license. I thought that was another additional important step in here to make sure that our elections are fair and accurate.
I had to smile when Troy answered that question about the gentleman's question. I think he left today disappointed, because both of those answered the same way. Election integrity is at the heart of our country. And we're seeing what's going on in California. I see some of my friends here, but we've had long discussions about elections. I will tell you that I'm proud of where Washington County has come and the things that we've put into place under our clerk auditor that I believe has strengthened our elections. And I want to give you guys credit. You didn't think we were listening, but we were. The fact of it is Ryan Sullivan now does hand audits of our elections. We now have all of our ballots segregated or separated off into precincts, which allows us to compare the results and do pure counts. And so we have come a long ways in Washington County. We've always tried to do elections right. But the one thing that a lot of you may not know is that elections are handled at the county basis, not by commissioners, but by clerk auditors.
Thank you. All right, as a Republican Party, as well as the county, we have to follow the state law, SB 54, which gives you the county convention, or the convention process and the signature path to get on the ballot. So the question is, what is your position on repealing SB 54? Do you support the traditional caucus system or prefer the signature route?
Well, I grew up in the convention delegate process. I like to tell the story. I know some of you have heard it. But I was 23 years old when I go to my first precinct meeting. There were 6 people there, and they were all my neighbors and friends, and they looked at me and said, Victor, you obviously like politics, I know you do. precinct chairman and state and county delegate. And I'd like to say that I graduated with a degree in political science from Southern Utah University, but I've learned as much about the political process being a delegate than I did in classrooms at the university. So I believe in this process, I love it. It's good to have people come up and really challenge you and talk to you. And so I continue to support, and I always have supported, the convention process as a route for a candidate.
I think it's good that everybody that ran this year, none of us got signatures, right? We all went to the convention, we've all ran that process. If you can't pull it out at convention, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. But I think it's also, I like to see a good, robust primary. I think a primary that vets people out in the public, and you get out and it forces you as a candidate to get out and talk to each and every community and each and every person that you can, instead of focusing on a small bunch. So look, I didn't push for it one way or the other, but the fact that they have a dual path, I don't think is, I think that there's an option for that, right? But I stuck to the convention, and it was good to see that that was the bar that everybody else stuck to.
Thank you. The next question is, as an elected official, you take an oath to obey the Constitution. So can you provide an example of something or decision or vote that demonstrates how you commit to the proper role of government?
Say that again.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't say that very well, I apologize. So, as an elected official, you're going to take an oath to obey the Constitution. Can you provide an example of a decision or vote that demonstrates your commitment to the proper role of government?
I can tell you that I actually did take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to protect, my community when I enlisted in the military and when I re-enlisted in the military. So I think it's important that that you make that commitment and you understand what the value of that, or you understand the ramifications of that, right? I deployed twice in service to our country. I deployed once in Bosnia and once in Kuwait. As far as decision making at the county, I think every time you look at it, you look at what government can and can't do isn't necessarily what government should and shouldn't do. Should and shouldn't is a better question to be asking, because a lot of times government gets mired up in things that where they overstep, and I think we've all seen that. And so I commit to look at things from a should and shouldn't perspective in the decision making process.
This question really makes me think of 2020. And when the federal government, the state government was shutting everybody down, I just couldn't believe that we were suspending our constitutional freedoms so easily over a health crisis. And so for me, I stood alone a lot during the COVID experience, but we kept Washington County open, we kept Washington County free, we gave the citizens the information that they needed to protect their own health, but we followed the Constitution. And I feel like that's an experience that really tested anybody that was in elected office. How did they act during COVID?
Thank you. You guys are doing great, giving us speedy answers, staying on task. We're going to switch to public safety and social issues. So while infrastructure and water dominate our conversations, issues like mental illness, homelessness, drug-related crimes, they are increasing. What's your specific plan to address these social challenges that sometimes get overlooked?
So, as a county commissioner, we are actually in charge of what's called Southwest Behavioral Health. So that's our Southwest, that's our mental health authority. What I've done as a county commissioner, we've worked on several issues, because what we're seeing a lot of times is that mental health ends up in our jails. And so we work with the state of Utah, we work with Southwest Behavioral Health to open up what we call the Crisis Stabilization Center. It's over there next to the DMV. It's an alternative for our law enforcement when they arrive out on the scene and they're interacting with someone who clearly needs to be removed from that situation. Right now, the only thing we have is taken to the jail. Now we have this Crisis Stabilization Center. We're able to divert them out of our system and hopefully get them some help that would stabilize them. That's a great partnership that we've created with the the state of Utah and with the county. It's run by Southwest Behavioral Health, and it was funded by the state. All the county did was show the leadership and provided the real estate for that important piece of infrastructure in our county.
Let's see, so besides water and infrastructure that we talked about, issues like mental illness, homelessness, drug-related crimes are increasing. So what's your specific plan to address these social challenges that sometimes get overlooked?
I think at every level you gotta look at it. I mean, you see the guy walking down the stairs, the guy in my neighborhood, he's walking back and forth and he carries his overnight stuff with him and he goes here, he goes there, he goes the other. But the challenge is some of these people, because of mental health issues, don't want to get help. He hasn't done anything wrong. We're not shipping him over to the jail yet. But he does need help. I do appreciate what SwitchPoint's been doing over the last few years. They don't just house somebody, they try to get them, either mental health, or they try to get them, some work services, some job skills, things like that. Housing is second. They try to treat the problem, they try to treat the person first. I think that it's important that the county steps up in greater respect to SwitchPoint. It wasn't until just last month that they finally gave them $25,000 out of their regular budget. I think that in the past that they've been asked for funds for years and years and years, and they turn them down. I think they're a huge resource in this community that we're overlooking.
In regards to SwitchPoint, so what you have to understand is that the county is responsible for both the public health and the mental health departments. And so when it comes to public health, we take $1.5 million out of your taxpayer dollars and we give it to public health, and we take almost $1 million and give it to behavioral health. And so it's one of those things where we just don't have the extra resources to help SwitchPoint, but we have been helping them in other ways, and we did help them during COVID and other times. And so it has more to do with what the county's responsibility is compared to what the state and city governments are.
I just think that all levels of government need to work together and support organizations like theirs to a greater extent. I mean, our city gave a fair amount of money in the homeless mitigation fund. St. George City has contributed hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year annual to some of these organizations. I think the housing it's not just a mental health issue, right? It's a housing and getting people off the street, getting people help issue.
Thank you. All right, the next question is regarding immigration. Let's see,
Regarding what?
Immigration. Do you support diverting Washington County resources at the Sheriff's Department to help work with federal agencies like ICE for deportations?
100%. 100%. If you're not here legally, then you're not here. Look, if somebody wants to come here through the front door, be vetted out, go take the steps to be immigrants, I welcome that, right? We're all immigrants to a certain extent, the majority of us anyway. And I think that's acceptable, right? If you're illegal, then you've broken laws, and you should be deported, right? And I think that any time that we have an opportunity to help the feds in that regard, I think it's important that we step up and do so. We've encouraged my city to do so in Washington City, and I think that it's good to see the sheriff doing it as well.
Absolutely. Our sheriff's office and our county attorney's office have been very active for the entire time, even during the Biden administration when it was so hard. And I think we'd all be proud of the partnerships they have with their local federal partners in dealing with this issue and making our community safe. We are a very safe community. We have great law enforcement and great law enforcement agencies that help make it that way.
Staying on the topic of working with the Sheriff's Department, is there anything you'd like to see improved there or changed, and how do you keep good officers in those positions at the county?
Well, part of being a county commissioner is there's 9 elected officials, and the county sheriff is elected and he works for you, but we also work with him. And I think one of the biggest responsibilities we have, and the biggest responsibility I have as a county commissioner, is helping take care of our county sheriff's office. I'm proud of the fact that we were able to just barely, we're not quite done yet, expand our jail, put a medical wing, put 80 beds there. It'll meet our needs for the next 25 years. I'm excited about the direction that the Sheriff's Office is moving and has moved. You know, I'm just going to say, Sheriff Brooks did great things, and he needs to be given credit for the great things that he's done. We have great men and women that work at the Sheriff's Office. And some of the things that we've done, we used to be losing all of our sheriffs to all of the different agencies. We do have that pay very competitive, and all the agencies used to be giving what I call a signing bonus. You come and work for St. George City, they'll give you $5,000. Well, I said, why don't we start rewarding our sheriffs for staying here? So now, when you stay here for 10 years, you get $10,000 from the Washington County Sheriff's Office, and guess what? We haven't been losing anybody.
In Washington City, I've always supported public safety, always. You know, whether it's fire EMS, whether it's our police department. You get, at the county level, I think you've got some issues in some of the outlying areas, and it's a resources issue, right? You know, it's disheartening for me when you're talking to people in some of the unincorporated areas and saying, we never see the sheriffs out here. You know, we got public safety needs as well, right? And so I think that the resources need to be committed to some of those unincorporated areas because that's where they control. And as much as possible, we need to bring on some new people. You know, I talked about earlier in Washington City with the fire and EMS tax. We're looking at two things with that. One is supporting the fire and EMS within our city, but it's also a resources issue because in the last 3 years in Washington City, we haven't been able to hire any fire or any police for my city. As my city's grown, that puts a lot of pressure on those guys that are still there. And so we need to look at what we can do to increase resources to the Sheriff's Department so that they can man up for some of those unincorporated areas.
Thank you. All right, our next topic is ethics and transparency. So, let's see, we're good control. Voters have raised questions about potential conflicts of interest. How will you ensure that your private business or your campaign donors do not influence your decision as a commissioner?
I turned down a bunch of money from campaign donors because I don't want to feel like I owe anybody. I think when this comes up, you know, conflict of interest, right? We're Troy's in construction. Well, you know what? I've never voted on anything that benefited me financially. State code says I need to declare a conflict, and it doesn't say that I need to not vote on it. It says, you know, the legislators up at the Capitol, they're compelled to vote on their own things. In my case, I recuse myself, I step off the council, and I step into the audience, right? And I don't pressure my other council members to make a vote on my behalf because I don't want them to have to look in the eye of anybody and say, hey, Belliston going to work me for my vote. Conflict of interest is a big deal. I think you need to look at the county commissioners too and say, hey, look, where are your conflicts of interest? I think it's a real problem at the county commission level when we have commissioners that sit on private boards of private organizations that receive taxpayer dollars. You need to look at that and say, are they there to protect the taxpayer dollar or are they there for access to the taxpayer dollar? I think that's a real question. I don't like the idea of being put in a position where I'm being worked for my vote to be able to, to give dollars to anybody.
Well, this is my rebuttal before I answer the question. I'm going to jump back to the nonprofit United We Pledge that I don't sit on, but it's been stated by some that I do. And the United We Pledge is a great organization. It teaches American children about America. We celebrate America's county. I do sit on the Liberty Village board as we've been trying to also teach about America. So there is no benefit to me to sit on that board except for to advance the cause. I do think when it comes to conflicts of interest, can I take my 30 seconds to bubble right now? I think that's the heart of this. I do think that land development is an honorable career, but I think it's an inherent conflict with this job as a county commissioner. Just like your doctor shouldn't necessarily run a board, be a mortician, or your veterinarian shouldn't necessarily run a butcher shop, I don't think your county commissioner should necessarily be a land developer.
Those are great analogies. I almost don't even know how to rebut that. Except to say, I've never had anything before the county commission. I've never done a development in unincorporated areas. And being in the development industry, there's a big difference between growing and growing responsibly, right? And these developers that come in, look, I can tell you as soon as they walk through the door, a developer that's going to contribute to the community, out and go back home. I can sniff them out, I know what they're made of, because I deal with them on a regular basis. In development, I deal with the long-term planning, I deal with the infrastructure, I deal with the budgets, I deal with the project management. And all of that plays into the decision-making process at the commission or the council, and it's valuable to those decisions and those conversations that are had.
Thank you, Mark. Next question is probably good. So many constituents feel ignored by their representatives. What is your personal policy for returning phone calls and maintaining transparency?
Well, transparency I'm going to jump back onto. I mean, one of the things that I did immediately after being a county commissioner is that we started bringing every item that was over $10,000 before the county commission. Even though it's a budget item, we bring it back and we vote on it so there can be more transparency on where your dollars are going. And so transparency is going to be an important issue. As far as returning phone calls, I do the best I absolutely can. I don't have a secretary. My wife is over there smiling because she's asking me, like, Victor, what are you going to do better at returning phone calls? And so I'm going to continue to try. I love one-on-one conversations. I love talking. There's less confusion if I can get you on the phone. So one last thing. If you're sending an email, please include your phone number and tell me to give you a call, because I really do like having that one-on-one conversations with people.
It's always important to talk to the people that you're elected to represent. One-on-one, face-to-face, in a public hearing, whatever, that's always important. As far as transparency goes, it's kind of surprising to me that transparency is important now, but up until a month ago, the county budget wasn't even on the website, just the executive summary, right? Transparency starts every single day, in every level. One of the things that we did in my city, right after I came on in 2016, is we put every staff report, every exhibit, every document that goes to the legislative process online. Those are public records, and those are your records. And so we now have those as a record that, going back to 2018, that I go back and refer to pull those exhibits up so that I can see what the conversation was. And we're now taking the minutes and tying that back to the YouTube video so that it hot links straight to that agenda item, so that people can look back and see what we were doing and the decisions that we were making on their behalf. Transparency is important at every level, at every step.
So the budget is voted on by the county commissioners, but the budget really belongs to our clerk auditor. And so we're on, Ryan is our clerk auditor, and he's in the middle of it. He has moved the budget on to the front of the website so you can find it. It was always available, you just had to look a little bit harder. So that is what we've done to increase that transparency. I will go back to my personal record, what I have done. Immediately, when I became a county commissioner, we started going to Facebook Live. We started trying to reach out to the community, using other mediums. When I first started, all we do is do it on the community television station that nobody watched. I said, it doesn't do us any good to televise something nobody watches. And so, actually, I didn't hear people tell me they watched that. So, if you watched it on the community television, I apologize.
I remember about that one a bit. I mean, the county doesn't even allow comments on their Facebook posts, right? We as a city use those as feedback from our residents. We read every single one of them whenever something comes up that we put out. We gauge the interest. We may not comment on everybody's response, but we read every single one of them, and I think it's important to engage with people on a regular basis. I think that the county doesn't put all the staff reports out. They don't put the exhibits out. They don't put the documents out that go in the legislative process. Those are your records, folks. Those are your records, and I think it's important to put it on there, and I would propose that moving forward, we actually have a website where all those staff reports and where all those public records are hosted long term.
Once again, the county commission is not responsible for those documents or the records of the county. It is our clerk auditor, and he's going to continue to work on that. I will say that, social media, we don't have comments. Part of it is in consultation with our attorneys, what slander looks like to other people. But I will tell you that I read Facebook, and people have a lot to say about say on social media about their local government?
Yeah, two things. Either every city in the county has it wrong on putting comments on social media posts, or the county has it wrong. You can't hide behind the attorneys and say, some attorney advised me, right? You can't have both. The second one is, it may be the clerk auditor that prepares the budget, it's the county commission that adopts it.
Alright, thank you. We're gonna move on to the other questions on that topic, let's get it. We're gonna move on to parks and recreation. So whether it be from the management of football courts or if it's the designation of the high desert trail for motorized recreation, how do you balance the competing needs of different groups while funding the infrastructure? And this one starts with Troy. So balancing between different recreational groups and the county supporting them.
Well, I think anytime you have a recreational group or a means for recreation in the county, you ought to support it, right? It's quality of life of Southern Utah that brings people here. It's quality of life that we enjoy that keeps us here, right? As far as the pickleball courts, since those were both mentioned, I don't have a problem with pickleball courts. I have a real problem with the idea that the county is going to build up one of the nicest facilities in the county and keep it under lock and key for nearly 3 years. And they use the excuse that, well, we don't have a Parks and Rec department. Garbage. Pickleballers can figure out who's up next, right? Anytime public money is used to build amenities, they need to be open to the public to pay for them. Period. The residents pay for the parking structure as well. They should have access to that. I went by the pickleball courts the other day. It was a sunny evening. The gates were up and the lights were on the roof. Who the heck is up there playing with the lights on when the gates are up? Open it up for everybody 24 hours a day in my book.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about pickleball. I will just say this, the question is about the philosophy of recreation. What the county's philosophy has been is working with our great city partners. Partners like Washington City, where we gave money towards the Grapevine Wash, or the Grapevine Trailhead, or the Canal Trailhead, or the St. George City in their building, the reconstruction of the Sun Bowl. It is true we don't have a parks department. It is true that opening up those 6 pickleball courts that nobody seems to play on, we did have to hire additional maintenance staff, but that's fine. We'll do that. And we have been building trails all across this county in partnership with our cities and in partnership with our federal partners as well, putting miles and miles of trail in. And so I think trails are one of the things we can all be proud of. And so the answer to this question really is partnerships. When you ask, what is my philosophy about recreation? It's working with the great partners across this county.
So the county has built a long time for the northern corridor with different environmental groups, lawsuits, things like that. How will you be able to move that project forward to the northern corridor?
Mother Nature, you've heard me say this, she didn't give us very many options on where to build roads. Washington County is not in Kansas. And so we need this corridor to get east and west. Now, part of this campaign, the things you learn out on the campaign is talking to people, for example, up in Green Springs and recognizing the impact that they're going to have. And my commitment to them, and my commitment to the citizens of Washington, is that when we build that corridor, we'll do it in a respectful manner to help mitigate the impacts that heavy traffic will have on that neighborhood. I actually wish that Washington and our planning and foresight would have tried a little harder on setbacks and other things so that we wouldn't be dealing with beautiful homes that are built up against the road that will become a parkway. But I will tell you, it's not a freeway, it's a parkway. We can control it with speed, and we can make it a very nice road to drive. I keep telling people, it's going to be a beautiful road, it's going to be an amazing road. People accuse me of channeling my inner Trump, but it is going to be a fantastic road, and we need it, and we're going to get it.
So that's the second time now that they said that it's a Washington City planning problem up in Green Springs. And the fact of the matter is, Washington City planned that road back as far as 1996. We We know that that road existed, we know that that connection was needed, but the developers have the right to come in and request what they get and get the zoning and build up the right of way, and that right of way does include buffers to the residences. And so it's not a Washington City planning problem. As far as that roadway getting built is concerned, you only get, there's 14 lanes in the cut. You can't get any more lanes through the cut. And then I think, again, it's really important. It's the only residents in Green Springs, or the only residents that are going to be negatively affected by that roadway, are my residents that I've been elected to represent Washington City. And so I think it's really important that we take that into account as that road's built with traffic calming measures and try to mitigate those impacts to those residents.
Thank you. Alright, switching gears a little bit, get to know you guys a little bit better. Starting with Troy, what specific accomplishment, either from outside politics in your career or from your elected positions, demonstrates your ability, I'm not saying this very well, but what's something that was shortened? What's something that's you're most proud of, an accomplishment that you've done either outside career or as your elected position?
8 years, 7 months, and 9 days is what my BD 214 says, and that's probably my biggest accomplishment. I think I wouldn't give that up for 1 minute. There's nothing that I would take back from that. Get a little choked up on this one. When I deployed to Bosnia in '96, to see that country go from being one of the most beautiful countries in Europe to ethnic cleansing in 8 years. And see the impact on the people over there, what that meant. We used to go to the chow hall and collect fruit. And when we go on our patrols, we hand that fruit out to the kids. And I got pictures of those kids framed up in my office. And I look back to them just for perspective to say, you know what, you're not so important. You need to look at that and say, it's a very humbling experience to be in an area like that. So, thanks.
Either outside of politics or as an elected official, what's your biggest accomplishment that you're proud of?
Outside politics, it's knocking Audrey Johnson into marrying me, and then 5 beautiful children and 5 grandchildren, and that's really why you do this job. Because you care about your community and you want your kids to have a place to live. When it comes to what we've been able to accomplish as a county commission, and I really say this, that it's a team, but I've been there and I've been fortunate to lead out on this issue. The first thing that somebody said that Commissioner Gardner told me and Commissioner Early told me is we need a new county administration building. And at the time we didn't have the money. At the time there was no way that we were going to do that. But yet when anybody would come to get services from the county, we ended up sending them to 5 different buildings. And to be able to save the money during the time that I was a county commissioner and build a beautiful building that is built for you to come in and interact with the county government and at the same time have an entire 3rd floor so that it will meet our needs for the next 100 years is something that I'm proud of.
What's something that distinguishes or sets you apart from your opponent?
Hair. Hair is what distinguishes us.
You took it out of my mouth.
But I will tell you that there's a reason why hair was left on my head. It's because he has a very handsome head when it's bald. And my head's funky and awkward, so it has to have hair on it. I would say it's experience and it's trust. And I've said this a couple times. Judge me on my record, friends. I'm not asking to stay here forever. This is the next. I'm only asking for 4 more years to finish a few things that are very critical and that I feel: water, transportation, and expanding our trail system. But judge me on the record, the fact that we haven't raised the mill levy in the county, and the fact that we've been able to pay off debt while we've built important infrastructure. That is not common. Now, granted, we've been blessed with a great county and great economics that has allowed that, but I think I've kept my promises to you the time that I've been a county commissioner.
Somebody asked me this the other day, and they said, what differentiates you? And I said, in my mind, perspective. I think it's important to come at it I think it's important to come in a position from the perspective of being somebody that's been in construction and dealing with infrastructure and dealing with project management and dealing with budgets and dealing with trying to keep things on point and on time and on budget. I think it's important to come at this from the perspective of being a business owner that's had to let people go and has had to sign those checks, right? I think it's important to come at it from the perspective of an elected official in my city and know the impacts that the decisions we're making on my community and my city and my ability to fund my police and fire and my public safety. And certainly we both have the same perspective of being a father and being a spouse and putting everything we have into our families. But overall, I think I have a broader range of experiences to pull from in the decision-making process, and I bring that perspective to this job.
We've got time for one more and then closing statements. So the last question, since this is a Republican primary, please tell us your favorite plank of the Republican platform, and on the contrary, is there anything that you don't fully agree with in the Republican platform? And we'll start Troy.
I'm drawing a blank because I don't know that there's a whole lot that I disagree with in the Republican platform. I think, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, being fiscally responsible. I think those are important, and I think that's the basis of the Republican platform, and I'm proud of all of those. I don't think that there's anything I really disagree in any of that. I think there's one of the things that I really enjoy being in the city. If there's one criticism, one of the things I really enjoy being in the city is it's nonpartisan. You're just going into it trying to do the best you can by the community and everybody that you're looking at in the audience, right? And the people that you're having conversations with. The one thing that I dislike about Republican politics is, sometimes we're talking about who's more rhino or who's more conservative, right? I think you lose the argument when you're doing that. You're not bringing people in, and you're not showing them why they should be Republicans. You're just showing them how we can be divisive too. So I think that there's that challenge, but I really enjoy working with people and trying to do the best by my community and help as many people as I possibly can across the board.
Your favorite plank of the Republican platform and anything on the country that you disagree with?
My favorite part of the Republican platform is pro-life. So one little personal thing, I have 5 beautiful children. They were all adopted. And so my second to the youngest son, his birth mother was in Kingman, Arizona. And we brought her up, and she stayed in Washington County to give birth to my son. And on the way up, she confided in us that the reason she was placing a child for adoption was that she didn't make it to the abortion clinic in time. And I think about this wonderful life that is here, and just my son and who he is, and all of the beauty that he will bring to those around him. And I think that is what distinguishes us as Republicans, is the idea that life matters, every life matters, your life matters, your children's life matters, and our young people need to know that we respect life.
We appreciate you guys putting your hat in the ring for this position. We're going to do our closing statements. I think Victor, you started at the beginning, so we'll have Troy start in 10 minutes, a little bit longer time.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all again for coming. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to as many of you as I possibly can. And I appreciate that a lot of you I've never met before, so I appreciate you coming. I think that closing statements. I don't ever know that I want to be done serving the community, right? And I enjoy being a part of contributing to the process. But I think it's important at every level that we, even though we don't have term limits here, we don't want to limit our terms. I think it's important that you serve, you contribute, and you step aside and let the next person have an opportunity. Because I think one of the things in the military is they moved you around, and they did that for a reason, because you brought the understanding of the body that you're with, whether it's the team at my squad level, or the platoon, or at the city level. That turnover in politics is actually important. And so I feel responsible to step aside in Washington City, step up to the county level and contribute there as well. And I think I bring that perspective that helps the decision-making process at the county. And I think it's time to serve there for no more than 2 terms. 2 terms is good enough for George Washington, it's good enough for me, and I think that's important too.
You know, every time someone gives you their vote, it's humbling to me that you would give me your confidence to represent you. And what I'm asking for is 4 more years. I'd ask you that this election really is about trust, and it's also about experience. And I would ask you to judge me on what I've done so far, but as we look forward, why would I ask for 4 more years? For several important reasons. One is that the next 4 years, I believe, in this county, are going to be some of the most critical as far as decisions that we make going forward. One is in water development. I grew up in Washington, I grew up in Bergen, I grew up floating down the canals. I appreciate the pioneers and the water that they developed, and we are at a time when we need to continue to push our 20-year plan forward, and I have the experience to do that. Second is getting some of these transportation routes that we're talking about done and across the finish line, and continue to give them attention. What are they? Northern Corridor, we need to secure that right away and get that under construction. The second is we need to give SR 9 coming into Hurricane some proper attention to representation. And so the transportation routes that we have, we need to really be working on. The third thing is a quality of life issue that I really believe in, and that is that we talk quite a bit about trails. We have often talked in this county over the last 4 decades about having a paved trail where you could go from Santa Clara to Springdale. And to be honest, friends, we're actually very close to that. Through UDOT, we have the money to go from Laverne to Springdale, and then we just have a couple missing links in between the backside of Washington to Grandpa's Pond and Hurricane, and then just finishing through Confluence Park here. To me, that is the quality of life as we grow, as our community becomes kind of more crowded than it was when I grew up. Access to public lands, I think, is essential, and enjoyment of public lands through a trail system is essential to our quality of life. Those are the 3 things that I really want to work on, as well as continuing on public safety and taxes, and continuing the record that I've done. So I ask you for your vote. I'll tell you, it'll make you feel good when you circle back for Victor Iverson. It's the right thing to do. But it is the right thing to do, but I just ask you to vote humbly.
Thank you so much for coming and being an informed voter. This is recorded, we will upload it, so if you have friends and neighbors, please share that with them. It will be on the Washington County Republican Party YouTube channel, and we wish you a good rest of your evening. Thank you so much. Great job. Give us a round of applause.